social interactions of where they get support and how they get support has shifted so markedly over this last year, where before we'd be like, oh my gosh, why are you spending so much time on your phone? Can you just put it down? And now we're recognizing that that phone has, for many girls, been their lifeline, been the way to connect and get support. And so we're looking at now, how do we balance their need for social connection with some of the complexities that social media can bring to relationships and to a girl's sense of herself. And then as the world begins to go back to some semblance of normalcy or more interaction in person, what does that mean for the social skills that they've not developed or lost along the way or need to refresh as they get back into their social settings and their school settings? Because what I'm hearing from educators too is that even when they're back at school, their device is still in front of them, and having conversations with one another is proving to be a bit more difficult than they may have thought. So I think those are some key things we need to really pay attention to right now.
This really resonates. So I have a 14-year-old girl, as you know, and two things. She's really tucked in. She still has a good core group of friends, but some of her newer friends, she's kind of lost through this journey, and it's tucked in. And then the other thing is she's spending a lot of time on TikTok, a lot of time. So what are some practical things we can do? You know, how can we talk to our girls and give them the confidence to go back to school and, you know, foster those new relationships? And then how do we talk to them about social media? Because she's picking up some great content on TikTok that she's actually bringing you to the dinner table that's interesting and valuable. And there's also a lot of junk on the platforms. So how do we talk to them about a healthy relationship with social media as well?
Yeah, well, one of the things that you just said is that she's bringing it to the dinner table. So a lot of girls don't have that opportunity to bring what they're engaging with digitally to their parents, because their parents think it's stupid or they don't understand social media, and they're just kind of roll their eyes of like, why are you spending so much time on that? So I think what you're doing is a great tip for creating an inviting atmosphere where she can show you what she's working on, what she's creating from a content standpoint, who she's following, and you could start a dialogue about that. Because when you create a disconnect, either because you don't understand something or you demean or belittle it, it doesn't make the other person want to share with you. And so cultivating an environment where she can share and be affirmed and feel valued, and like her perspective and her ideas are something that you're curious about, gives her the space to not feel like she has to hide it or be ashamed of it or just be like, oh, my parents, they're so old, they don't understand anything. So I think part of it is understanding that their realities of how they connect with friends, how they make new relationships, and how they sustain those relationships probably look very different than the way that you and I may have done that. Most of our relationships probably started or our early friendships in person. And then we cultivated those maybe through technology and through talking on the phone and through other ways. But
I was like, technology, what? The phone. It was the phone.
Right.
Attached to the wall.
Yes.
So my mom could hear all my conversations because I was like laying in the kitchen having the, talk.
Yeah, or they picked up the other line and were like, Rachel, get off the phone, right? Yes. So I think their lives just look so very different. And so instead of being like, well, when I was a kid, we didn't have all of this, or this is how relationships are best made, I think to allow them to be the experts on their own lives, right? And to invite us into understanding. And so I think when we give girls that sense that, you know what, when it comes to social media, like, you're the expert, and I'd love for you to show me how to do this. I'd love for you to teach, walk me through this, show me what you're following. And then when she does, it's an invitation then to try to understand more and be like, okay, so what do you like about this person? Or like, why are you following them? Or what are the things that you do? Or how does this actually work? Like, I'd like to learn. Everyone wants to be the expert, right? And when we give girls the opportunity to be the expert, wow, does that feel like a new role for them? And it puts us in a different power differential with them. It gives them a little more power in the relationship.
I'm gonna tell my husband about this conversation. It's gonna be very validating to him, and I want to give him props because she's his producer. And
Okay.
he does TikTok videos with her because he figured if it was something she was really into, that he
Yep.
should get into it too. So,
Oh, see, total bonus points, right?
and so anybody listening, I do give bonus points for that. And also when they're sharing what they're looking at with you, it also can lead to some tough conversations or challenging conversations that are important about what they're looking at and why, and kind of helping them kind of work through some of that tricky material as well. So I really love that advice.
Well, and I think the way that we respond to what they share will determine if they share more or less. And
Yep.
so if they share something that is sensitive or provocative, and our reaction is like, oh my gosh, put that away. Why are you even following that? Then they'll become more closed off from a future conversation. And then when it comes to, like you said, navigating something that's hard or tricky, we might not then be the person that they come to because they feel judged or they feel like, oh my gosh, my mom's going to get so mad if I show this to her. So let me just deal with it on my own.
So we talked about a lot about social media, which I hope is helpful to people, is helpful to me. Let's circle back on friends and getting back to school, and how can we talk to our girls about that?
Yeah, I think that what I'm hearing, so I've been doing some focus groups over the last couple of months with girls to talk about this in particular, and I'm asking them a bit of their reactions to, because some are going back to school a couple days a week, some are in full time, some are still virtual. It just depends on where they are across the country. There have been some positives that girls have reported about this time, and a few of those are that they feel like they've gotten closer with their families. And so while begrudgingly that happened, against their will, many are finding like, oh, wow, I'm actually getting along better with my parents than I thought, or we're having more fun together than I would have anticipated. Some of the drawbacks, though, are missing their friends, but also a lot of girls have got increased responsibilities at home where they're looking after younger siblings, where they're having trouble getting their schoolwork done because of the responsibilities that both their parents are working out of the home, and now they've had to take on all this other stuff. And so the idea of getting back to school feels to them like a reprieve, like they can get their lives back to normal. And so as we're kind of thinking about getting girls into this space of going back to school and also how we support them throughout the summer, I think for us, it's thinking about what do they need? What is she experiencing? And then what does she need as we move forward throughout this next academic year? So is going back to school exciting for her, or is it terrifying? Is being with her friends something that brings her joy and excitement, or is it something that it brings a lot of trepidation? So I think for the way that we're thinking, it has to be a very tailored and personalized approach based on what your girl is actually experiencing.
From what I caught of that was awesome. And Lisa, thank God you're a pro, and thank you for all of our listeners for being gracious with my internet problems today. I have never had these types of problems, but I think it comes with the territory working from home. Switching gears just a little bit is I want to go deeper. And, one of the things that we see in our research is that on women in the workplace is that, women of color are having a worse experience than white women, almost across the board on every dimension. So I know that your data set is big enough that you're also really able to look at the experiences of Black and brown girls. Can you talk to us a little bit about what they're going through and what's different?
Yeah. So we, in our national research, about a third of our sample included girls of color. And so when we were able to kind of disaggregate the data and look at some of these, even the concepts that I've been talking about so far, like confidence and leadership, we found some very positive interpersonal outcomes for girls. In particular, we found that Black girls have higher levels of confidence than their peers, and their confidence starts in a higher place and it ends in a higher place. They still experience the similar decline during the adolescent years, but at the end, right, at 12th grade, like they're still, their confidence is still higher. One of the other things that we found that I think is noteworthy is when we look at the traits of leadership, we found that Black girls had much higher rates of or much higher scores on the leadership metrics, right? They were less likely to be afraid to speak their mind. They wanted to occupy leadership positions. They didn't really have the same trepidation as their peers, and so it showed us that Black girls are poised for leadership in such a unique way, but that in many ways the world isn't ready or accepting of what they have to offer. And so I think the directive is not to the girls, but to us, to the people who are parenting and mentoring and teaching, of what we need to be looking for in all girls, but in particular these strengths that Black girls bring to the table, and ensure that we're providing environments that give them opportunities to lead and give them the chances to demonstrate their confidence and their leadership in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise. So
yeah, that really resonates, really resonates. And we see the same thing in the workplace, and yet Black women and other women of color experience more barriers, more headwinds, and yet have more desire to be, senior leaders, want to do it for the right reasons, to change their culture and lift other people up. So I am with you. We need to find more ways to unlock opportunities for girls of color. The other thing that I know that is in your research, I believe we talked about this a little bit, that really, I wish I could say it floored me, but it's how early kids start assigning gender to things like work and being at home, and how quickly those stereotypes get planted.
Yep.
You talk to us a little bit about that, and then what we can do to make sure they don't get planted in the kids around us.
Yeah. So I think that so often when we talk about occupying leadership and gender equity in leadership, the conversation starts way too late, right? We talk about it when we're already in the workplace, and we're like, how do we get more women into these leadership positions? And we have to take that conversation way, way back to the earliest influences that kids are experiencing. Because while there's interpersonal factors that contribute to whether or not I see myself as a leader or I see those positions as attainable for me, there's also systemic issues, right? And messages that kids are receiving from the time they're really small.
Yeah.
And so kids know in kindergarten who does what, right? They know that if you have them go through an exercise or to draw a picture of certain kinds of careers, or to assign that men do this or women do this, they know that women are teachers and nurses. They know that moms are more likely to stay at home. They know that men are businessmen and politicians, right? The ideas around who does what becomes ingrained in them early. And then it's a matter of having to try to undo that, which is a way harder thing than to start to give kids exposure to diversity in careers from the time that they're small. And so I'll tell you a quick story of a time I saw this work well. Is I was talking to a woman who is a physician, and she was talking about her son, who was maybe 5 or 6 years old, who had to go see a specialist. And so mom is a physician. His primary care doctor is female. And when they were on the way to see the specialist, he said, "Hey, Mom, what's her name?" And she's like, I felt like such a total win in that moment, that his default was that the specialist was going to be female, right? And so those exposures are so important, that kids begin to see not just a variety of people in different races and ethnicities and genders in different occupations, but also that they see themselves as those occupations are attainable for them. Because we know that kids and young adults start to write off certain options in jobs and careers for themselves because it doesn't align with how they see themselves. Like, I don't see anybody who looks like me in that job, so that must not be for me. And I think that as those of us who want to elevate and shift the face of leadership in our country, we have to start by having kids see those opportunities as accessible for them, and then create the paths for them to actually get there.
All right, this is a leading question. I have a little bit of an agenda here, but what can we do at home?
I mean, I think there's so much that can be done at home. I think at home is the place where you have the chance to have the hard conversations to counter the messages that might be coming in from other places, right? While you can't insulate kids and you can't keep them from taking in all of the stuff that they're taking in from media and other sources, home is the place to have the critical conversations and to help them in a healthfully consume the messages and consume the media and deconstruct the conversations and who and what they're seeing. So I think part of it is being able to create a safe environment where your girls feel safe to have a hard conversation and to say, like, you know what, mom, like, all the teachers at my school are female, and the only male teachers we have are the science teacher and the athletic director. Or for her to say, like, hey, mom, why does dad always drive when we go places? But you can drive, because if dad's not there, you drive me the places, right? So I think to create curiosities and to point out the situations that would contribute to a certain sense of gender equity or inequity is like such a cool conversation and discourse to be able to create on the regular, so that it doesn't feel like, let's have a conversation about you and what you're going to do when you grow up, because I want you to know you could do anything you want, but like have that be part of the regular articulation of the pace of life and the pace of the conversations that you have.
All right, I'm going to plug the research that I love on this, which is if partners or caregivers share work more evenly, there is research that shows kids of all genders grow up thinking there's just a broader range of opportunity for them. The other thing we do is a little like kind of stereotype judo at home, which is I do things that, you know, like I'm kind of more of the handy person. I kill bugs, but Scott does more of the drop-offs. And some of that's just naturally what we're good at, but some of it is a little of us wink, wink, nod, nod. How do we kind of shake up some like kind of really outdated gender norms and show our kids us doing, you know, lots of things and a myriad of things. So I think that helps a little bit too.
Oh, totally. And to that point, like when girls have dads or male role models who have more expansive ideas of gender, as far as like who should do what, or that you know, girls can do all of these things, and it's not like, oh, that's for girls or that's for boys. So when they have those male role models and folks who are reinforcing that more expansive view, they fare better, right? The girls fare better. They actually do better in math and science. They do better in their thinking about their opportunities and their occupations. So
even healthy relationships.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Great. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Lisa, we are starting to wrap up, and I've loved chatting with you, and I really want to create some space for you at the end. What do you want listeners to hear that we haven't touched on yet? Or is there anything I haven't asked you that you wish I did? Just want to give you the floor.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. I think that so much of what is important is that we're thinking about the roles that we play in our girls' lives as the role models, right? That they're looking to us to understand what's possible for them, and that we have the chance to reinforce certain kinds of messages for them. We have the chance to create certain kinds of opportunities for them, and we have the chance to help them see themselves in ways that they might not. Because the reality is, when girls are struggling with confidence, they're also struggling with decision-making. And we might see the most competent, capable girl in the world when we look at her, but she's not necessarily seeing that in herself. And so I think that the critical role that we play in helping her identify all her strengths, all the traits and characteristics that she possesses that make her uniquely her, that are about effort and competence and hustle and grit and not about appearance, right? Help her begin to see what's possible for her future, and begin to place her on a trajectory for her life that is not limited in any way based on the restricting messages that she might be taking in from the world. And so I think My hope is that we will look to the girls that we parent and mentor, the young women who are our colleagues that we want to bring along as leaders, and we'll make a conscious decision and a cognizant effort to ensure that we're reinforcing the strong, proactive, pro-social opportunities for her, and that we're addressing the barriers, whether they're systemic or interpersonal, that are keeping us from a more equitable environment for all of our girls and women.
I love that. That was the perfect way to end. Thank you, Lisa, Dr. Hinkleman. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I hope you all got something that you can take into your life to use with your own girls or girls that you take care of or love dearly. So thank you so much for tuning in. And thanks again, Lisa.
Thanks, Rachel. It's so good to be here.
It's so fun.
So good to
The
be here.
world is complicated
so
for
fun.
girls. It's a difficult place for them to develop a strong sense of confidence. Confidence in their bodies, their abilities, their opinions, their opportunities. And ultimately,
So good to be
the
here.
world is
Confidence is
complicated
so
for
fun.
girls. But what if there was an in-depth, evidence-based solution to help girls develop the skills needed to navigate these challenges, to help them learn how to stand up for themselves, handle pressure and conflict, and learn the power of no, stop, I can, I will. This is the power of ROX, a different kind of organization with only one mission: to equip girls with the skills to live strong, independent, safe, and courageous lives. ROX isn't just a curriculum, it's a movement. ROX is empowering thousands of girls and is training parents and educators with programs in schools and communities across the country. Join the movement to help every girl say,
I am a ROX girl, and I'm ruling my own experiences
from this generation forward. Go to rulingourexperiences.org to learn more.
Welcome to Accelerating Equity, Advancing Leadership. I'm Dr. Lisa Hinkleman, the founder and CEO of Ruling Our Experiences, or ROX. We are thrilled to have you join us today to learn more about what research is telling us about the cultivation of leadership in girls and women, and to engage in important conversations on the big and small ways that we can create more equitable and empowering opportunities and environments. At ROX, our work is rooted in data and research. In fact, we conducted the first ever, largest of its kind national survey of teen girls called the Girls Index. We surveyed over 10,000 girls about key issues impacting their lives. We wanted to hear their perceptions of their abilities and their hopes for the future. Here's some of what we learned. We learned that confidence declines sharply from 5th to 9th grade, and that it doesn't return to pre-middle school levels. We learned that by the time girls get to high school, 46% don't believe they're smart enough for their dream career. 1 in 3 stay away from leadership positions because they don't want people to think they're bossy. And 1 in 2 don't speak their mind or disagree with others because they want to be liked. We also learned that even among the highest achieving girls, they still struggle with confidence. 30% of the girls with 4.0 grade point averages still didn't think they were smart enough for their dream job. This group, the highest achievers, were also the most likely to have difficulty speaking their mind and sharing their opinions. We know that without intervention, these girls who struggle with confidence can grow into women who continue to question their own abilities, who struggle with imposter syndrome, and who might unintentionally hold themselves back from actualizing their full potential. Because we also know that women don't begin to rate themselves as confident as men rate themselves until they're in their mid-40s. Confidence is a key trait of an effective leader. And so we also wanted to understand how girls view leadership and how they view themselves and how they construct their identities as leaders. So when we think about the skills of leadership, we think about the ability to share our thoughts and opinions with others. Being able to disagree when necessary and not being afraid to take a stand or be in control. We learned that girls who lacked confidence were much more likely to lack these key leadership traits. And so we recognize that without first focusing on confidence, we won't be successful in changing the landscape of leadership. Changing this leadership landscape also means attending to the needs of girls and women of color. 1/3 of our national research sample included girls of color, which allows us to make comparisons between and among different groups so that we can better understand girls' unique experiences and then ensure that we educate, support, and encourage them in precisely the way that they need. When we first analyzed the data from the Girls Index, we found that collectively girls' confidence plummets between 5th and 9th grade, and then it doesn't rebound. But then when we disaggregated this data by ethnicity, we found that the confidence of Black girls actually increases from elementary school to middle school, and then it remains higher than their peers throughout high school. We also found that when it comes to leadership, Black girls are the most likely to embody those key traits of leadership. They're less afraid to speak their mind or share their opinion. Black girls are the most likely to embrace being in charge, and when compared to their peers, they have an increased belief in their abilities and their leadership potential. So while these findings are positive and illuminating, we know that simply being poised for leadership does not necessarily translate into opportunities to lead. So these findings further challenge us to explore the factors and the systems and the stereotypes that are holding back girls of color and push us to identify what we need to be doing individually, programmatically, and systemically to address these disparities. We believe that we can change the face of leadership in our organizations, but we know that it's not going to be easy. And so investing in girls while we continue to develop the leadership traits of our female colleagues, that's how we truly have the chance to cultivate the next generation of leaders that our organizations so desperately need. And that's why you're here today, to start this conversation, because we know that despite increased attention to accelerating equity across many sectors, women are still underrepresented. They represent just 8% of Fortune 500 CEOs, 21% of C-suite positions, and just 25% of our country's elected officials. We know that there is much more work to do, because there are interpersonal, environmental, and systemic challenges that influence the aspiration, opportunity, and acquisition of leadership positions for women, and that these barriers can begin to emerge during the early adolescent years. But we also know that with focused attention and strategic intervention, we can change the trajectory of girls' and women's lives and ultimately change what leadership looks like in our country. So thank you for having the courage to take on these challenging but necessary conversations today. It's our hope that you will increase your awareness of the personal and professional challenges facing girls and women, and then develop some new insights on how to effectively cultivate this next generation of female leaders. As individuals who parent, mentor, and inspire girls, we invite you to share this research with the girls in your life. So take the time to discuss their personal and social challenges. What is impacting how they feel about themselves and their opportunities? Then provide intervention, support, and encouragement where they need it most. Because if we can help girls maintain their confidence and identify their potential and truly believe in their own abilities, we have the chance to change the trajectory of their lives and change what leadership looks like throughout our organizations. As a corporate change agent, we hope that this dialogue will inspire you to galvanize supportive resources to ensure that the immediate and long-term success of your female employees is addressed. From short-term COVID-19 recovery efforts to long-lasting changes that aim to close the wage gap, increase racial and gender representation in leadership, and improve family support options. Every effort moves us closer to a more affirming and equitable society. ROX is proud to partner with you, and we are here for you every step of the way. Let's get to work.
Hi, Lee. Welcome.